Are ancient colored tartans older than modern colored tartans? Nope. In this video, I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to explain the differences between ancient, modern, weathered, and muted color palettes when it comes to tartans. Before I get into it, if you like tartans, if you like Scottish history, if you like Irish history, if you like learning about Gaelic culture, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel. So here's the deal. Tartans come in different color palettes in the same way that cars come in different colors. Think of it this way. A Jeep Wrangler in blue versus a Jeep Wrangler in green versus a Jeep Wrangler in red. They're all Jeep Wranglers. It's just a different color of the car. You can do the same thing with tartans. A tartan is actually defined by its thread count. The thread count is what makes the pattern. It's the sequence of numbers and colors stacked up across the warp and across the weft that actually defines the pattern. So, what color blue, what color green, what color red you use can shift based on the color palette. Now, here we have the McDonald tartan in the ancient color palette. I call it ancient because it's using a light blue, a light grassy green, and an orangish kind of red color. Next, we have the McDonald modern tartan right here. Notice the lines are continuing. This is the exact same pattern. These orange and red lines are the same, but the color palette shifts just a little bit. So in modern color palette, this orangey kind of red color becomes a scarlet red. This grassy light green becomes a beer bottle, a dark green. This light blue becomes a navy blue when you're talking about the modern color palette. Next, we're going to talk about the weathered color palette. In the weathered color palette, the green color becomes this nice light brown. The blue becomes this like gunmetal gray kind of color. And the red, the nice scarlet red in the modern, becomes a pinkish salmony kind of red. This is all in the weathered color palette. Now, over here, we have McDonald in the muted color palette. For muted, the blue becomes a stormy sky blue. The green becomes more of an olive green color, and the red becomes a blood red kind of color. Now, which one is oldest? I'm going to go through the timeline for you. So, the first tartans were kind of de facto. There wasn't a color palette for them. It was just the design. So, because there was nothing to compare it against. So you'd have the MacDonald clan tartan. And for the most part, kind of looked like this. It really looked a lot like our modern color palette that we use today. Now, and that was in the 1800s. Now, fast forward to the, let's say, 1920s, that kind of time frame. Mills wanted to give their customers options. Let's say you're a McDonald and you wanted something a little bit lighter. You wanted something maybe a little bit more feminine. Maybe you just wanted a lighter color green because you really like light green. Great. The Mills decided to shift the colors up a little bit and mimic plant dyes, like really, really old dyes. And they came up with the ancient color palette. Because they called this one ancient, they had to do something else for the other one. So they called these modern, and these were meant to mimic the modern alkaline dyes. So the ancient color palette came in around the 1920s. Next, we're going to travel to the 1950s and the Mill DC Dogleash and their bit of marketing shtick with what they called reproduction colors, saying that there was a bit of tartan that they pulled out of a bog, and these are old colors. Believe that if you like. I got a bridge to sell you. Anyway, the reproduction colors are also known as weathered colors. Again, this is just a mill giving a color shift to a particular tartan to give the customer, the consumer, choice in their color palette. Now we're going to fast forward to the 1970s. With the success of these different color palettes, the House of Edgar said, hey, let's do something that kind of splits the difference between weathered and modern. Let's do a muted color palette. So this was designed by House of Edgar in the 1970s. So ultimately the question becomes, which one's right? All of them. None of them are wrong. It's all the same tartan, just a different color shift. If you want to wear a weathered tartan for formal, have at it. It's not less formal because it's weathered. It's just different. How formal or how casual you are all comes down to the accessories that you have with your outfit. What type of jacket you're wearing, what type of sporran you're wearing, what type of shoes you're wearing, that kind of thing. Now, you may ask, Well, what about dress tartans, or what about hunting tartans? Those are different tartans entirely, with entirely different thread counts. We cover those in these videos over here.